Well, here we are, July 5th, 2025, and we have begun our return to Boston. I have to say, when I came in on this bay, it was foggy, it was humid, I couldn't tell what was here. But what a difference a week makes, right? Now we got those beautiful hills in the distance. I'm not sure if they can be seen in the background there, but beautiful hills in the distance. We got Vinyl Haven, the island of Vinyl Haven right in front of us. It's a beautiful morning. A little light tailwind here, a little bit of a westerly, which should allow us to maybe do a little bit of a beam heading south out of the Penobscot Bay, so that'd be great. But what a morning. Let me show you. There's the beautiful town of Rockland, Maine. What a gorgeous place. I mean, I definitely would like to be back with 2 or 3 months time to explore this whole bay. But amazing sleep every single night. Ferries going in and out there, you don't even know it. Cruise ships going in and out, you don't even know it. It's amazing, amazing, amazing place. Definitely my #1 harbor and my #1 place to stay in all of New England that I've seen so far, bar none, without a doubt. It definitely was difficult to get here, but I can see that the reward is huge. And again, we haven't even like scratched the surface. But here we go. We got the bow into the sun, heading east. And yeah, happy to start the way back. Alrighty, it's 7:15 in the morning, so basically about an hour that we left Rockland, and likely the wind prediction is accurate. The wind is from the west, very gentle but good enough to sail. So engine is off just an hour after leaving Rockland. We're doing a nice 5.5 knots, just jib and jibber as we call it. You see right there, 5.5 knots, heading dead south. We gotta clear a lot of the geography from Maine. And there we are, just jib and jibber, so that way I can control everything from the cockpit here. 5.5 knots, a pretty good speed. And heading south on an absolutely glorious, glorious, glorious morning. It literally just doesn't get any better than this. To be able to see all these hills in the distance, as somebody who was born in a hilly province of Córdoba, Argentina, man, it's nice to see hills in the distance. There's a ferry going out from Rockland. There's the Rockland area. There's the Rockland Harbor right here. So it's just absolutely outstanding, outstanding, outstanding weather. It's kind of fresh, but not too bad. Just absolute heaven right now. Enjoying every second of the actual sailing with the engine off. Yeah, we're gonna do as much southy as we can. The winds are supposed to rotate to the south. So so I'm trying to go around a pot. When we're sailing, I'm not too concerned about pots, but we don't have to tempt fate. So anyway, winds are supposed to rotate to the south. When they do that, then hopefully I'm hoping that I can be in a position at that point where I'm south of all the islands here, and I can then turn west towards Portland and go on a beam heading to Portland. So that's kind of the plan. So far the wind predictions are accurate, knock on wood, they'll remain so. So we'll see, but just happy to see this bay finally. When I came in here, it was so foggy that everything was just a wall of white. So now that I can see everything, what a beautiful landscape. So basically the strategy for today was to kind of do as much south as we can with the winds that we have this morning. So here's where we are right now. We're just coming up on what they call Little Green Island and Large Green Island. Little Green Island, Large Green Island. And so we got a beautiful beam wind, and the wind is coming from this direction, so it's a perfect beam. So the idea was to come south as much as possible, because if you look at the big picture, we have to head that way, and we have to clear this point right here, which is, I don't even know what it is, what it's called, Bald Head Ledge. So, you know, we gotta clear that, right? So there's no point trying to make a whole lot of west. That would put us right in front, you know, right with the wind in front of us. So with this beautiful westerly breeze, I can make all the south that I want. So I'm gonna take advantage of that. The winds are supposed to go from like here, and then they're supposed to block south later in the afternoon. So that will be the moment to go west. So for now, I'm enjoying this beautiful 6.6 knots of beautiful beam heading south, and I'm gonna try to milk it for all it's worth. So yeah, I mean, I'm happy that the predictions were exactly what they were supposed to, and so, you know, it's beautiful right now. So yeah, I think that's gonna be the plan, to just continue heading south. This is pretty incredible. We're doing 6.9, almost 7 knots right now, and the ride is so incredibly comfortable that if I wasn't looking at the number for the speed, I would think we're doing like 4 knots right now. I think it's a combination of the sea state. If you can see the sea state, it's pretty benign. Just some, I don't know, less than 1 foot chop. So I think these are ideal conditions for this boat hull. I think this boat hull is really optimized because, again, the bow is pretty flat up front. So I think he's just getting on top of these little tiny chops and able to glide right through. And so he's very efficient right now. It's 6.5 knots, and I mean, it's so comfortable right now. I'm so happy. We're definitely full sail. Got the mid-sun. By the way, another very interesting thing about the mid-sun is that, as you can tell, it's providing some shade from the sun. The sun is on the other side of that sail, right over there. There's the sun. But over here, the mid-sun sail is providing a nice shade, so that's good. Got the Maine there, slightly tilted, and yeah, we're ripping along here at 6 knots. So there's a little green island, and there's a big green island, or vice versa. These are the 2 green islands that I was showing in the map earlier. So at some point we gotta go there. I'm just enjoying, again, I'm trying to keep the angle because we're doing some really good speed. There's the angle right there, and the little wind indicator. So we're in a perfect beam, and so we're ripping along here. So speed in this case is more important than distance. Can I cut a corner there distance wise? Sure, but it's not going to slow me down by at least a knot. It's not even worth it. It's better to keep the speed even if it's a little bit longer run. Besides, I'm trying to get ready for that. Hopefully that wind is going to turn around and clock. I think it's already starting. I'm already seeing the wind starting to point a little more south, I think. So I think the more south I can go right now with this nice light speed, the better. So that's the strategy for now. I'm just about coming up on Monhegan Island here, motoring. I'm hoping that after I pass that, I'll have more options for angle. But what happened now is that this ginormous sailboat has showed up on the horizon. It's called Maximus. Now you don't call that sailboat Maximus just because, right? So this thing must be something special. I can see it on AIS, and I can also see these enormous sails in the distance. Check that out. Like here is gonna seem like very small, but it's right about there, and their sails look huge. Again, the GoPro is probably not gonna show it right, but according to AIS, it's a 170-foot vessel, sailing vessel, and it's clearly under sail right now. The sails are black, so I don't know, it looks imposing from a distance. A little colorful note about Maximus is that, as you can see in this screen, there's another little tiny boat right next to it, which is called Minimus. Well, guess what? My deduction is that that's the tender. The dinghy from Maximus is called Minimus. These guys are geniuses. Another fellow boaters smashing against the wave with the wind on their nose. It's almost 2 p.m. The wind hasn't turned to the south, so we're literally driving right into the wind and right into the waves. So Evergreen right now is smashing waves of really 3 feet-ish. Not fun ride. Motoring for the last 4 hours again. Now I'm motoring more than I've sailed today. I'm seriously thinking deviating towards BoothBay Harbor. That would allow me to get there in 4 hours. Portland, I mean, we're going too slow. Even though the motor is turning just as fast as he could give us, like 5 knots if the seas were flatter. Because we're bashing into the waves and we're bashing into the wind, we're going at barely 3.4 knots. So this is not sustainable, clearly. So I'm just gonna give him 1 more hour of opportunity for the wind to turn south as it was predicted. If it doesn't, I'm just gonna turn right, be able to sail at least for a couple of hours to BoothBay. It is kind of funny. This sailboat here, the American Glory, is a cruise ship that we saw in Rockland, Maine. So that's kind of funny. I guess he's making the stops along the coast just like we are. Right over there we got the that sailboat right there is the Yankee Cowboy. I guess we're all headed in the same direction to BoothBay Harbor. We're looking for a passage that is called the Fisherman Passage right there in the north, so that you avoid having to go all around the various little islands around here. So I ended up mooring in BoothBay Harbor after all, and I waited there for about 2.5 days. What you see me doing there is writing down my maintenance log, because I did have one maintenance issue in this trip, and that is that my starter battery somehow shorted while trying to start, and that melted my battery selector terminal a little bit. Luckily, I was able to find an identical one in town, which is just absolutely crazy. In a town like this, you would find a spare like that. And anyway, the next day I took a walk through the footbridge over to downtown, an incredibly beautiful, beautiful, quaint downtown. You just see one store after the next. It seems like a set that comes out of a Hollywood movie or something. Just absolutely gorgeous. Plenty of people out there, but nothing that prevented me from enjoying it. I took a cup of coffee and some pastries, and I sat down there in the landing and just soak it all in. The day was absolutely beautiful. Lots of sunshine. All the colors were bright and beautiful. It seemed like just a movie. I also enjoyed a lot of the traditional sloops out there in the harbor coming in and out. There's a lot of charter boats and charter sailboats that are working in the summer there, and people come from all over the country to do that, which is awesome to see. I also went into one of the stores and got some mementos there, like, pirate hats and, little shirts, whatever, as a memory of me being the farthest north that I've ever taken my sailboat to. When I was walking there, I saw in Bristol Marine in the shipyard this major sailboat there. This is the brig Niagara. It's been brought to them from the Great Lakes for a major refit. It's going to be a year refit and $5 million. It's amazing to see that they have the skill set required for them to bring brought this kind of boats to be worked on. So after 2.5 days waiting for favorable winds, we finally had the winds we needed. Set up the boat for rainy weather with a full cockpit enclosure. Our boat was definitely not the nicest in town, but it was definitely a working cruising boat for sure. So we headed out from BoothBay and basically motored 90% of the way over. The original plan was Rockport, but the easterly winds made it not suitable for the anchorage there, so we ended up in Gloucester. So there we were. It was a pretty good night at the beginning. You can see the moon there reflected in the ocean. It was just gorgeous. However, part of the challenge that happened later in the evening is that a line of thunderstorm crossed our path. My wife warned me about it on the cell phone, and then right after that we lost coverage because I was almost 30 miles offshore, so we lost coverage for the better part of the night. So that made it a little bit stressful, but luckily I called the Coast Guard and they were able to give me some sense of where the storms were and where they were moving. So I was able to determine that the storms were moving more east than north, so overall they didn't affect me. The sailing cockpit of Evergreen in action in rainy weather. Got the radar fully in motion here. Got the AIS and the screen, which has the 360-degree kind of orientation. It's not bad. I mean, for a sailboat, it's not bad considering the weather conditions. About 2 hours to get home, and I'm ready to be home. It's been 2 weeks on the boat. 2 weeks. In pretty challenging conditions most of the day, so I'm ready to be home. Now with following seas, the motion of the boat is a little more relaxed and comfortable. Couple of people roughing it out there. These guys have no enclosure whatsoever. There they are, in the mist and the rain, and they're going against the waves. So there's boat number one, and I'm assuming this is a buddy boat right here, also roughing it. So after this whole trip to Maine, finally back home, kind of reflecting on the whole experience and trying to get some major conclusions for my next seasons. Question number one is, all right, so overnight sailing, I did 2 of them, one on the way over to Maine, one on the way back. Was it worth it? Did it make sense? I would say that from the perspective of harnessing the wind, it made sense on the way over. I was able to get 10 hours of sail that otherwise I wouldn't have gotten if I had pulled over somewhere to sleep that night. So from that perspective, it made sense, but from a physical perspective, it did not. Because I spent most of the next day sleeping 12 hours just to recover. So I would say it makes sense, but definitely with at least a crew of 2, as far as I'm concerned. So that way, even 4 or 5 hours of sleep that night would have completely changed the level of enjoyment of the sail, as well as the level of quick recovery the next day when arriving into Maine. So that's my conclusion as far as the overnight sailing. The other conclusion of it, and you'll see in the stats that I put in for the trip, is that I sailed for 20 hours more or less, and I motored for about 60. So for every hour of sailing, I motored about 3 hours. So as a sailboat owner, that always makes you feel conflicted, right? Why do I have a sailboat if I'm motoring way more than I'm sailing? I think that the conclusion behind that is that, yeah, we're all on vacation usually in the summer, which is the light wind season. So that's always going to make it challenging. However, I'm always focused on the live aboard dream that I have for the future. So I'm hoping that in those cases, I'll be sailing in September, October, where there's plenty of wind. So I'm hoping that then the proportion will be way different, hopefully. Definitely, as I mentioned earlier, on the way over to Maine, definitely need to improve the protection, the weather protection for the crew, particularly in the cockpit. And I already have a couple of ideas about that. My boat is a little more challenging because it's a catch rig boat, so there's a mast and a lot of stays in the cockpit, which makes just a bimini not as trivial to put in. But that's something I'm going to be working on in the next off season. The last thing I would say is that I only burn about 50 to 60 gallons of fuel all told. So money-wise, these sailboats are very inexpensive. And then staying, for example, in Rockland and BoothBay, I'm usually staying on a mooring, $55, and I could have anchored in both places, reducing the cost dramatically. So they're very economical. So from that perspective, from the perspective of traveling in a very economical way with your little house on board, it still makes a lot of sense, assuming that you have the time to stay in Maine, right? I think that this trip would have made a lot more sense if I had 2 or 3 months to stay there. And I'm hoping that in the future, near future, once I'm retired, I think that definitely would like to go back and do exactly that. But overall, Maine, it was amazing. I believe it's the best cruising ground in New England after this trip. And again, very much looking forward to going back to it. And it taught me a lot of things, right? This whole trip, my first 2 overnight sails, taught me a lot about me and about the boat and about the environment that I'm sailing on. So I'll be chewing on a lot of that in the off season.